Welcome to Field Talk, where we unearth stories from the field and dive into the minds of creators, artists, and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Craig Sheffield, and today I'm excited to welcome the talented Gabriela Yvonne to our virtual studio. Gabriela is a clinical therapist who is also a remarkable artist and entrepreneur who has found success in the world of digital art and streetwear design. Today, we'll be delving into the intricacies of her creative process, her journey in collaborating with indie game developers, and the therapeutic benefits she has encountered through her art. We'll explore her experiences with negotiating terms and expectations with clients, setting clear boundaries to ensure fair pay and a healthy creative process. We'll also discover how Gabriela has navigated the challenges of being an independent artist, from balancing perfectionism with time management to the power of finding a supportive community. So buckle up as we embark on this insightful conversation with Gabriela and prepare to be inspired by her resilience, creativity, and passion for art. Let's dive into the world of mad profit and the fascinating mind behind it. Thanks so much for joining me here and being, on the other side of the world as a lot of my guests recently have been. I know it's nighttime over there for you. And so I guess, how was your day?
Yeah, it was pretty busy, but it's nice to wind down in this space with you. Some days are kind of up and down in the mental health world. So it's always nice to just kind of have some downtime before bed.
Instead of asking you about maybe your past or anything, related to work necessarily, I'm going to start out with a question about what is getting you excited these days, or like what's on your mind and really get you up and out of bed, motivated to do stuff.
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. I'm currently very inspired by my cohort group that I'm a part of with mental health. So in that way, it is still tied to work, but they're really fantastic people doing really neat things. And that just keeps me really motivated. And also just my creative stuff, not necessarily my own work, but others. I'm always inspired by a lot of I'm very lucky to know a lot of great musicians and writers. I like reading and listening to different music, and that really pumps me up, honestly. So I try to keep that involved in my life.
Excellent. So tell me a little bit more about that cohort that you mentioned and, what is the direction for that? What is going on?
Yeah. So there seems to be this gap right now with mental health access, especially like in rural communities. So, outside of the city, not enough clinics, not enough mental health clinicians. And so they're really doing a lot of groundwork, trying to kind of explore what the needs are, especially with kids out there. And there's just some cool research, that I'm getting to be a part of. We're doing different projects right now, kind of looking at, how, COVID ended up impacting the school districts and the kids and what going back is like for both parents and kids. We're looking at kind of the increase in suicide. I mean, to be honest, we're seeing a lot of a high increase, especially in teen groups. And so, yeah, we're just trying to explore that. And, these people have a true passion for really learning about this and researching it and putting their work out there. So that's inspiring to me for sure.
And I understand that you were able to receive a scholarship from the city to further your clinical care work. Could you tell me about, how you got that, how that came into your site, and what it's helping you do?
Yeah, it kind of was unexpected. I received a notice. I had done some work locally here in Flower Mound, Texas, and I was working with some representatives, and we were getting a lot of pushback on some of the things we were trying to accomplish here. And I kind of just kept showing up, trying to talk to them. And eventually, one of the program coordinators from my school said, hey, we've got this scholarship opportunity. It is, kind of busy. There's a lot of candidates, but I think you'd be a good one because you've worked in the field and had contact with these folks. And I thought, sure, I'll give it a whirl. And I applied, and we had to do a proposal out in Austin for some of the field work we're trying to do. Um, I spoke mostly on kind of what teens and especially BIPOC communities, teens and youth of color are really having to face in terms of barriers. And so I presented that. And then I didn't hear anything, of course, for a few months. And then I got the notice that the city was wanting to honor that scholarship. So I was really grateful. It's going to allow me to further this licensing that I'm seeking, and then also put some money to some research, which is really what I intended to continue doing. So I'm super grateful that they gave that to me.
That's great. So just forgive me for, kind of taking a step back here. I know some people are probably right on board with what you're saying, but me, I'm completely ignorant about, let's just say, therapy in general. I haven't been inside a therapist's office. And, what is your kind of work like exactly? Like, are you going out into the field and, meeting people where they are? Are they coming to you inside of an office? What does it look like?
Yeah. So actually, before COVID and even before my own health journey about 7 years ago, I was working at a hospital, at a children's hospital. And so that was pretty intensive because those are inpatient care, something pretty acute going on. And so you're there day in and day out. And a lot of those kids are also there for several weeks, sometimes months, with little, connection to family or school. They actually go to school in the psych unit with our awesome teachers there. So that environment is definitely more intensive in that way. And then I branched out to private practice. So more of like what you're saying, working in a clinic, a small practice of maybe there's about 5 of us clinicians, and we work out of the same office. And I'm luckily able to also do remote, which I think it seems like it wouldn't be as effective, but we're finding that especially teens prefer that. There's a sense of anonymity for them. And so they like to be able to just text their therapist or if they want to have a chat like this on camera or voice, and they might feel safer than having to come into it's less intimidating for them at first. So yeah, I kind of work in those two areas right now. But yeah, mostly it's, through referral sometimes, or we do have people going out to the schools and trying to develop more programs where we say, hey, if there are teachers or administration that notice these children are needing some kind of support that they can't get in the classroom because classrooms are already severely overwhelmed, then we have, these clinicians, that we can work with. And that's been really helpful because it really does take kind of getting your troops out into the field a little bit to get the access out, which is what one of our big goals is right now.
Mm. And sorry, again, just to go on a fundamental level here, when you say our goals, you're talking about this cohort again?
Yeah, so it's the cohorts more with the research, and then I would say like the practice that I'm involved with. The 5 of us are trying to get programs developed here locally, so that there's more accessibility, and also just getting the word out there. Trying to get programs to involve the younger folks in.
Okay. All right. So yeah, it's your own practice that you're involved with. There's like 5 of you, and since it's a private practice, you're actively going out and trying to seek more clients per se, but just finding more people that you could help. And so there is some kind of strategy going on inside of that part of your world, if you will. Do you take any active role with? And I hate to conflict or like put the two ideas of marketing and therapy together. But I think it's inevitable. You do need to find clients, right? You do need to identify those groups that, like you're saying, are underserved. They need somebody there. There may be lack of funding even. And so you are going out and seeking other ways to get the funding. And like I said, do you have any hand in any of that let's say like marketing or the way that you're finding people? Are you just in the field, just identifying that and then bringing it back to the group that you're working with, and then they're having someone else do that kind of legwork?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. That is something that we don't necessarily quote unquote train in, right? For marketing, there's not a whole lot of that when we're in our field of study in school. But it's such an important part, and I do or have done a lot of that myself before. And I think now, working with a group practice, I'm kind of fortunate that someone else who's more experienced in that than myself is able to do it for us and with us. And so, yeah, that kind of keeps us going. Because it's a whole other thing for sure. Yeah.
Okay. I know that, you're doing a lot of great work with different groups around. You're trying to help teens, for instance, and you've gotten a scholarship that's helping you get more training and then serve more people in the area, and particularly underserved people. So definitely kudos and congratulations. And people are lucky to have you in that area.
Oh, thank you.
Getting getting the help that they need. But I was gonna kind of shift gears a little bit and start talking to you more about your other parts of your life that I see right behind you. You have all of this equipment back there, which I don't even know what some of those tools are. They could be woodworking or 3D printing. I have no idea. Uh, but you have your interests in art, and I just hope that you could enlighten us as to what you're into. What are you getting into and doing, creating these days?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you noticing my little my little cave here. It started small. Most people will say that it started with a couple things I was interested in doing. I had a couple of tablets. I was doing a lot of digital artwork, and then I started getting interested in apparel with some of my designs. I would get requested like, oh, I'd love to see that like on a shirt or something. And I thought, well, I have these great suppliers that I use and I still use them. They do wonderful work, but I wanted to know what the process was like myself. And so I bought, you can see like a heat press behind me. There's a big cutting mat. And those are the kinds of things that I started playing around with. So yes, I do have a little mini shop back there for the apparel prints. And it's kind of fun. I basically print out my designs on these huge sheets of vinyl, and then I kind of cut around them and resize them. And then I use the heat press to put them on different items. And in the other corner, I got into just painting minis. I had a friend that was really into it, taught me a couple things. I will say this, I'm not very good at that. I'm going to try to stick to my digital art, but it's still really fun to, take some time and use paint in a different medium. I didn't actually start off as a like traditional artist with, paint brushes and paint. I used them as a kid, but when it comes to like my actual work, I didn't dive into it that way. And so it's kind of fun to try different mediums and see what feels good and what I like.
Okay, cool. That kind of relates to this new lifestyle brand that you're about to launch or have recently launched, I guess, depending on the date this is released. Uh, can you tell me about how that got started? And I guess you could go as far back as to how you got into art, or what was your first thing? Did you study that formally at all, or is it just kind of a love and passion type of thing?
Yeah, it's definitely just a love and passion type of thing. I did not take any formal art classes. I got really into character art back when I was playing on like 8-bit video games. I just liked the way the characters moved. I liked scenes. And then, of course, once, video game animation developed into what it became, I was just fascinated with concept art, especially environmental art. It's in the background, but it can really make or break a game for me. And I was really drawn to that. And then I just started, I guess, just messing around as a teen, really. I just would play a game. And if I saw something that inspired me, I would kind of just go to my little sketch pad and start drawing it out. I wasn't again, I wasn't very good. I had artist friends at the time, and I understood that I wasn't really like this great artist or anything, but I just loved doing it. And then it kind of fell off. I went to UNT and was studying psychology and playing instruments. And so I didn't really do much with my art. And it wasn't until, well, honestly, until I went through my health journey a few years back and I wasn't able to do a whole lot of physical activity at the time. And art was just really healing. And it was really working my mental health really well. And then I realized, oh, maybe I do still have a thing for this. And by the time I got back to work and started working with kids again, I was using it honestly as a modality, as art therapy. And I would work with the kids to kind of get them to do some art therapy with me. And the whole reason this brand kind of started is I took one of those images. I believe it was like a Final Fantasy painting that I did with Sephiroth and Cloud. And I put it on this forum, this video game forum. And like the next day, I just expected maybe some, fellow nerds to check it out and whatever. But the next day I heard from a couple of indie developers out in Portugal that really liked my work. And they said, hey, we're looking for someone to maybe do some poster art for the games where, kind of maybe draw the concepts that they're thinking of. And that's always a unique challenge because I want to do it justice. If somebody has a vision that they want to see, explored and created visually, it's exciting to me. And so, yeah, we just started working on that. And then it kind of snowballed from there. It was like, oh, I really like this. Or someone would say, oh, can you also do some anime art? And so I started just producing and putting it out there. And I'm not a very I'm kind of shy about putting my work out there. I know some people are very confident and they go out there and, hey, check out this track I wrote. And I'm kind of not. And so it took me a little bit to really like openly share my work and openly receive feedback or compliments even. And so once that got going, I realized, oh, there's a market for this still. There's a neat. I've always enjoyed the culture behind comic book and video game, and I think there's a neat love for it out there. And so it just really inspires me to keep creating. And then that's kind of where the brand came into place.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, there's a few pieces in there, segments that you kind of voiced that I'd like to go a little bit further into, if you don't mind. The, of course, starting anything from just the passion, we probably have all done that at some point, and then had that dip or that lull where we lose that interest. And I think I lost that interest for drawing like way back in grade school. I thought I was something, compared to my classmates, maybe I'm pretty good at drawing. And then for whatever reason, I got into music, and then that became like that first thing that I would go to, and it was another creative outlet. It kind of fills that space, and it's interesting that you have that same kind of trajectory, but you approached it, you came back to it for a different reason, like a therapeutic type of reason in your experience. And I don't know how much you're willing to share about that, but is there anything you could tell us about how exactly it was helping you therapeutically? Because I know playing music for myself is very therapeutic whenever I do get on an instrument and play through. Even if it's just something very simple, it can be so transformative to my psyche, right? What was going on in your life that you can share with us? And how do you think other people can use something like that?
Yeah, no, I can relate to that, what you're describing about instruments and playing music. That's definitely what music has done for me as well. At the time, I had gotten pretty sick from actually one of my clients at the time. And it affected me because it took the doctors a long time to really figure out what was going on. And so I was extremely fatigued. My breathing was not doing well. I basically became bedridden for a couple years. It was a very long time. And it was at a time where I was really honestly doing well in my career, both with psychology, and I was traveling with a modeling contract at the time. And both of those things were going well. And then when I became ill, it was like everything just kind of stopped. I had to go stay with family members. I had to leave my work. And then it just became a sole focus of getting better. And when that becomes such a day-to-day thing, and maybe I've also discussed this with clients who describe this in their experience as well, you get really familiar with what helps you. You get very familiar with what you have to do to get better or to keep going. And that's essentially kind of where some of those creative things came in. I didn't have the physical energy to do like a workout, which is what maybe someone else would use. Go exercise, get those endorphins going, change your brain chemistry that way. That's lovely, but it wasn't something I was able to use. And so I think that's where art really came in. I didn't feel well enough to really be up and doing things. I was taking some treatments at the time for this virus that had hit me. And it really came down to just what I felt like doing. And the good thing about creative projects, and you can probably relate, is that it really does exercise your mind. Granted, you're not like in the hole either, where you're just like not liking what you're doing constantly or something, right? It can have its other side, but it really pushed and forced my mind to work and to not be caught up in what was physically going on, but really helped me mentally focus and feel productive, because it helped me feel like, okay, there's a direction here when I'm creating something. It feels so good when I would come back to it and see the progress. And I think in the bigger picture, no pun intended, clients, all sorts of work that I do has that same feeling. It's just in a different medium. It's still got that effort and the progress, and being able to look at how you respond to something differently now, or how it got you to a new place. And so I think that's how it served me back then.
I'm just thinking of different, situations where, yeah, it's so great to do that. Those of us that are lucky enough, we can just go out for, a bike ride, or, pick up some weights or whatever, just do some sit-ups and push-ups. This can like do so much for our mental health. But when you can't do that type of thing, it seems like, having a project, something that you can come back to, and then you can kind of see that progress. Like I said, even if it's just something as, basic as practicing, kind of a basic skill with drawing or painting, even just a musical instrument, it's still gratifying to come back to that, and you can kind of explore and change it, and you don't have to always, meet the parameters. It's not quite like a math equation where it's like right or wrong. So you can change your goal and say, well, now I'm going to, instead of practicing circles, I'm going to, practice ovals or a different shape.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But, it's just something simple that you can put your mind into that takes it away from all the other problems that you have, and allows you to see that change over time is powerful. So yeah, if you haven't gone into some other and tried some other project in a long time, it's always healthy. So I do encourage the listeners, if you're out there and you haven't picked up a thing to draw in a while, or whatever it is, maybe try to explore that again and see how it changes your outlook on the other things.
Absolutely.
So, and I understand that the first thing you said that kind of got you going with actually putting your art out there. Well, I guess to take a step back a little bit further than that, what spurred you to put that first piece of art, you said it was maybe based on something out of Final Fantasy, on the forum, and so that somebody else could see it? Because I know you already told us, you're not so outward facing when it comes to those aspects of your life sometimes, even though I understand now with your brand, you almost have to be.
You have to be, yeah. Yeah, I think I enjoyed creating something with my client that day and feeling like it benefited them. And then also I realized how much I had missed it. And I thought, I think I was thinking more about the community at the time and how supportive it kind of is in a lot of ways, or at least those that I've been around. They really appreciated that kind of thing. And so it was just on a whim. I don't know. It's a good question. Maybe I just kind of felt a little gutsier that day or something.
Oh, okay. But that did lead to just some recognition. And I'm sure you had been developing the skills and the things like maybe you could be so kind as to like share some of those artworks that you were doing at that time. But it got your foot in the door, and that was just a forum that you said that you normally contribute in, or is that something that was related to the person that you were creating the art for?
I think it was just on Steam. I think I was on either Steam or Reddit, some kind of, I liked to keep up with character art or ideas that developers were coming up with. And it was a neat way to see that. And so I was kind of already involved in the threads, but they had a channel for fan art or anything like that. And so it just kind of, I thought, oh, maybe a few people will check it out. But I guess you never know who's in there. So it worked out.
Yeah, cool. I'm sure it can stand on its own, and we all kind of have those things that we worked on for a while, and we may be insecure. It's great that you got over that insecurity by kind of turning it into, I'm doing this for someone else. It's not to make money off of. I'm not putting this out there so that other people can necessarily judge it. You just want to contribute something. And, for me personally, I think that's the easiest way, or the most healthy way that I can think of to create anything, like just this podcast, for instance. I'm not making it for myself. I'm trying to think of, what can I ask Gabriela right now that somebody else could use in their own life, being the therapist and an artist and all these other things that you are.
That's awesome. I was actually kind of curious, if you don't mind sharing, like what sparked the podcast idea for you. Has it been something you were kind of churning for a while, or something happened that you were like, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I've definitely been thinking about doing a podcast for a while. I've been dabbling with all of the audio equipment. I'm sitting here in my studio right now. I've been working on music projects, and I've been playing in bands and doing all these things like related to different types of audio production. And I like listening to podcasts. I do enjoy just that format and listening to radio, I guess, at some point in my life, but not a whole lot. But the topical based things have been very interesting to me recently. And so, a long time ago, I used to think, I'm going to start making movies. That was kind of like, the child part of me was like, I'm going to be a director one of these days. It's still in the cards, but anyway, I started thinking that, I can combine all of these interests that I have, like editing video and sound, and how do I get all those things together? And just right now in my life, I feel like this type of content, having a conversation with somebody, finding something kind of actionable or useful for somebody else, is what all of my skills kind of point to at this juncture in my life. And so I'm here talking with you, and hopefully we can get a few more of those pieces of information that can help other people, because I'm not sure that did.
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. No, I love that you have a clear purpose behind it, and I'm grateful that I get to be a little part of it today.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. I learn something every time I do one of these, I believe. But thank you so much for asking a question to me. I think that's only happened a few times, but I like when that does happen.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, you put your art on this forum. Somebody saw it. They hired you. I assume that the indie developer in Portugal kind of hired you. Can you tell us about that a little bit? Like, that was your first time being hired to do this type of project, I assume? Like, was it just like, I'm going to have a FaceTime meeting, with you, and then you're going to make something to me and send it. I'm going to give you an approval, and then I'm going to send you some money, or, how did that work for you exactly?
Sounds all sketch overseas. Yeah, I mean, pretty much that was kind of how it went. They organized a meeting between myself, a couple of the developers, and then they had a concept artist guy, which was exciting for me because I wanted to do concept art, which is, where they're just developing the idea and you're creating the environment, before characters, before, machines or whatever they're using. They just want the world. They just want to create the world. And so that was really cool. I met with, his name's Christopher. He's a Polish animator. And so I was able to kind of get an idea from him, what is it they're doing out there. And it's interesting. It's a lot smaller. What I'm finding is there are a lot smaller studios doing some cool stuff. It's maybe you don't have, I don't know, Riot Games, or there's some smaller indie studios. But it was really cool to just kind of get an idea of what those guys are doing. And so it just, I started working with Chris, and they kind of put us together, and they said, let's give it a run. We have an event coming up. Can you guys design a couple of environment posters, and then we'll see if we want to use them. And so that's just kind of how it took off, just little steps. And then they ended up liking what I did and brought me on. It's per project, so it's not like I'm an in-house animator for them, but it's pretty neat. It's a neat side project to kind of have.
Mm-hmm. And I like really getting into the nitty-gritty of stuff. So if it's something confidential or against some terms anywhere in any of your contracts, feel free to tell us. But I think this is so interesting in terms of anybody that's trying to, navigate the waters as a freelancer, which it sounds like that's essentially what you're operating as right now with that team. And, are they giving you a contract up front that says, here are the items that we want you to create for us? Or is it like an hourly based type of situation? And, just can you walk us through some of those fine details of, I don't know how this works. Gabriela, can you tell me?
Yeah. No, it's basically that they offered up a contract, not so much saying this is what we'll be doing and this is how much you'll be making, but it's more of like, you're with us, you're part of the team. Are you willing to take on projects throughout the year? This is kind of the range of pay that we do for them. And then you just kind of get pitched the project. And I kind of like that. It is a little tricky. I imagine if this was like my only gig, that could be a little bit scary, but I like the flexibility and the spontaneity. They kind of, when they're developing something, they can come to us and we throw out some ideas. It's a fun, even the meetings are kind of fun because we can pitch different ideas. And so, and then we just start creating, they check it out, make changes. And then, getting to do my own stuff on the side outside of that. So they're pretty organized about it. So it's not like, 8 months go by and there's no project. They're pretty consistent with what they're creating. So that's kind of nice.
Okay, great. So they're offering you the contract and saying, here's the range of pay, but they're not telling you when they're going to give you the next project to work on. And then I guess through the evaluation process, like, is there some kind of parameters on that? Have you ever run into any problems throughout the creation process where they're asking you for a lot of revisions, for instance, and it's costing you a lot of time, whereas they're either paying you on a flat rate or they're doing it hourly? And how is that working?
Yeah. So if there's usually a pretty stable, consistent amount of revisions. It can range, but usually, within 5 rounds at most, we'll get it. But there was one project where it went quite a long time. And you're right, that can affect, the amount of time you're investing, your pay. And so we just negotiate those terms ahead of time. They treat their artists very well, luckily. And so they just kind of say, this is this is what we're looking at. And then once we kind of hit that mark, then Christopher and I are able to say like, okay, now we're hitting, a lot of time here, guys. What kind of pay scale are we looking at? Just so we all know ahead of time, and we set the expectations early, and that gets negotiated. And I didn't really have that experience before. A lot of times freelancers, you're doing a lot of extra work sometimes without knowing the pay or not getting the pay. And I did that for a while, and that was cool at the time if it was something I wanted to be a part of. But eventually, it's neat, now working for a studio that really credits the work and appreciates it as it's done.
Mm-hmm. So they have a budget kind of that they can play within, and then you're just letting them know. And you said you've already worked out terms ahead of time. Would you recommend that strategy for anybody that is a freelancer? And I know a lot of us are these days. How would you go about, or how would you do it now if you were going back into strictly freelancing or trying to move that into a higher part of your income? Negotiating with clients about this is the amount of revisions that we can allow, or how would you approach that, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think setting expectations early, being clear with not only what the client might be requesting, but also what it'll take for you to be on board with the project. And then just negotiating terms before you jump into a project, so that if there is something, obviously with art or music, things can change. And just kind of deciding early on, am I willing to be flexible for those changes? And if I am, what does that come with? Is it going to be, I can dedicate this amount of time for this amount of pay and I'm willing to do that? Or yeah, maybe I'm willing to just extend my time, even if they don't pay me a lot of extra. Maybe I just really love this project. So yeah, I think just being aware early on what it is that you're trying to do, and, being okay that maybe that doesn't quite work for every client. I like to take into account who the client is. If it's a smaller scale project, I understand that budgets are different, and you want to try to be aware of that and considerate of that, but then also making sure that you're not being taken advantage of. There's different gray areas, I think.
Yeah, it's extremely complex. I think everybody that has done it has run into a situation where that's push and a pull kind of. You're trying to give a little bit, and then the other person might be trying to take, there's money on the line, and somebody cares deeply about a project, probably from both sides, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's complex, and we're all working on it. And I'm going to ask you, we'll move forward a little bit with the, Mad Profit brand. And, I want to ask you about Mad Profit, but I also want to understand exactly, just to clarify in my own head, what is a lifestyle brand? What makes something a lifestyle brand? Can you just help me with that?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that, because I've asked myself that as well. What made it lifestyle? And I think it's when there's something, for me, it's a personal definition, I guess, because I don't know what it means in the big world. But I think in my artistic view, I think it's when you kind of embody that either that culture or that aesthetic, or even just that world, that feeling. I think art can create that. I think apparel can create that. And lifestyle is kind of part of that. There's some streetwear designs that I'm going to be putting out, and there's a whole thing about that I didn't even know. I would get requested like, hey, can you do some kind of like edgy, cool cyberpunk kind of designs? And I love cyberpunk aesthetic, but I just kept thinking, well, what does that mean? To do it on apparel. And it does. It has kind of its own little design concept to it, and I enjoy it. So yeah, I think it's just some type of like connection to the style makes it that lifestyle, in my opinion. That's very abstract, but that's kind of what it means to me.
And you're creating art for Mad Profit. Do you have like this general theme? Like, are there kind of is it all kind of video game based, or is it more abstract where it's like taking inspiration from a particular time period, or something like this, so that all of the items that you can purchase are in that vein, or is it like a color palette? I mean, what is it exactly that identifies Mad Prophet?
Yeah, Mad Prophet is, I've found, mostly a couple different genres. So the art prints are mostly either cyberpunk or video game. And video game can include whether it's character or environment. And then the streetwear, a lot of it is anime style. So there's characters, there's kind of that anime aesthetic. And then there's definitely some edgier stuff. I think that's where the Mad Prophet idea actually came from. I like a lot of like dark themed fantasy work. I like skulls. I like creepy creatures. I like designing them. I like a lot of villain characters in books and movies. And so that's really honestly where Mad Prophet kind of came from, this kind of like eerie concept that I had. So there's going to be some of that as well, just edgier kind of dark concepts.
Okay, cool. I'll definitely have to look into some of those things. I can envision them in my head, but I'm wondering, what that'll come through your own lens, if you will, to see it on a shirt. Cool. Or what are the types of things that you sell or you're finding are popular?
Yeah. So outside of the prints, because there's poster prints, there's canvases that I'm going to be doing. There's tiles, which are kind of a new popular thing where you have these 8x8 inch canvas tiles and you put them together to create a bigger image. So I'll be doing some of the paintings on that. And then outside of that, for the apparel, we're going to have everything from, backpacks and hats and T-shirts and hoodies. I think some of the fun stuff is when someone requests like a pattern, for example, like, hey, can you do some retro gaming, cute chibi stuff, and it's like, I'll create a pattern from that. And, we make a bag out of it. And the suppliers are great. They are able to take my ideas and really make those materials. It's not some kind of cheapo thing. They do a great job with it. So yeah, it'll be a variety, I think.
Okay, cool. I know one of my friends, I actually interviewed her recently. She's working with one of these suppliers, I believe. And, she can send her prints. I send her prints. She sends her designs right over to this supplier, and then people can order through them and pretty much put that design on many different items. Like you were saying, are you operating in a very similar capacity?
I did for a while. I have seen that. I think it's cool because you can get all sorts of stuff. It's similar, except that certain designs I'm going to keep to certain items, mostly because I've come to find that if I design something, for example, that has a complex backdrop to it, even though the character might be at the forefront, the character might print well, but then you get kind of these pixelated, funky things going on, and then it's not really the art piece you created. So yeah, it's similar, but maybe a little bit more like I'm trying to customize whatever it is that I'm doing to certain items, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can limit the options for individual designs that you have.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I asked you for some background information before we had our talk, and you mentioned that you thought mindset was really important.
Yeah. I don't know how it is for others, but I know for me, when I'm creative, I can also be critical of my work, and it serves me at times. It pushes me to rethink a concept or to try something differently. But sometimes I can be on overdrive. And so I work to create in a way that feels good to me as much as possible, even if I have deadlines or even if there's some pressure coming from the client. I want to enjoy the process. And I've been known in the past, whether it was with dance or music, I struggled with perfectionism for a long time, and I would be really hard on myself, and it's not good enough, and I would try again. And I remember feeling that way from a very young age when I was competing. And in a lot of ways, like I said, it served me to be competitive and work hard. But at the end of the day, it's such a barrier. And so I think really having that knowledge that you're capable of creating that mental discipline and also that environment that is going to help you thrive. I think that's such a big part for me. Whether it's in my creative work or just in my day-to-day care.
So kind of finding a balance between, this incessant need that a lot of artists find themselves battling is I have to get it the way it's in my head, that perfect way you could voice it, even though that perfect thing probably changes constantly in your head, like as soon as you reach
it's
that
like
next level,
unreachable.
You're always thinking about the other person or the other goal that you can have. And it's a beautiful thing that we're, our brains are creative in that way, that we can envision a new goal kind of immediately.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's also debilitating if you maintain that outlook, as you're reaching the end of whatever project. I've had projects go on years. And of course, you're changing and learning and growing throughout that process. But if I chose to go back to an earlier stage, in that project, just because I said, well, I could do that a lot better now, it would never be finished.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. Going back and being like, well, what could I do with that now? Yeah.
And it's a fun, it's something I think I should do more of, actually, is to go through a project, complete it, and then present it or do whatever you will with it. And then, take a step back from it, do the other things that you're going to do in your life, and then possibly.
And then revisit.
Precisely. You can learn a lot from that and say, oh, well, I have, developed this skill a little bit more, and my perspective's changed a little bit here, and I get a different outcome.
Yeah, I agree.
But it seems like, you're trying to approach it from a healthy mindset. And how do you just maintain that awareness as you're going through something? Are you doing the kind of thing that I've heard so often where, you just set that deadline or that date where you say, I've got to be finished with it here, no matter what? Are you still allowing yourself some flexibility to, to try to reach that perfectionism, even though you have that pressure from the outside or internally?
Yeah, I do tend to work where having the deadline or the end goal in mind is helpful. But I do allow the flexibility. I think it gives me a chance to sharpen the axe sometimes, to kind of take a break, take a step back, maybe put my mind on other things that I need to do or want to do. And then kind of, like you were saying, maybe revisit before I complete the project. But I do have to have some kind of structure or I will prolong. So yeah, it's helpful to have that in mind.
Are you often given that structure by something, someone else, like a client? Or you like to use something yourself that helps you maintain that timeline or deadline?
I do like to organize that for myself. If the structure is there, I'll certainly take it into consideration and then just kind of, make it to where it works for me. But I do like to create that for myself. I enjoy creating that for myself. And then it kind of pushes me to stick to it.
Right. And I understand you use some things that I also utilize a lot myself, such as the Pomodoro technique, that
Oh, nice.
you set the timer and it's a countdown type of aspect, and then ding. And after that, you stop that project, or you take a little break, and then you can come back for another round. But you're trying to maintain focus throughout that time period, right?
Yeah. Honestly, when I first heard about it a while back, I thought that would not work for me. I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to really either discipline myself or that my mind is going to want to do it. And that was true. The first few times I didn't like it. I felt resistance to it. And that kind of made me want to try it even more. I thought, well, maybe I can get good at this too. But it took a while. I don't know how it went for you, but it was a little bit of an adjustment with that technique.
Ooh, I'm trying to think about like when I first started using it. You know what? Here's the thing I found with it. I didn't think it was difficult to adhere to it. I actually found it liberating, I think, at first, because I could just know that the time's over and then, okay, I just sit back or whatever and go walk off and walk around the house, get a drink, whatever it is. But I found that after I've used it for quite a long time now, I tend to not take the breaks any longer. I'm actually working through the breaks, and I'm almost disregarding the time. It's in the background. I've grown too accustomed to it, so much so that I think I've defeated the whole purpose of like having that time allotment so that you can take a break. I do take breaks, of course, but I'm just not taking them at the intervals which the timer would tell me that I should. Have you ever found that? I mean, I think I should just change strategies altogether.
I'm kind of almost wondering if there's some research with that. If like there's a Pomodoro, but it's like your own Pomodoro, right? Like you're doing it on your timeline, so to say, taking your breaks when you want. I would imagine that it would have the same effect, right? If you're still taking the breaks, it's still doing the same thing to your brain, I would think. I don't know. I don't have the neurobiology knowledge to know, but I would imagine that it resets you in the right way and you come back to your project. And I mean, that's cool that you've been able to maintain that, even if it's just changed form a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as effective. I think it's just become one of those static things in my life. I do use it for things that I really don't want to do. There's some like the study aspects, when you're trying to develop something that you're not good at. I definitely use it then. Whenever it dings, I'm like, all right, I don't have
All right,
to really like engage.
Yeah, and you're like, I made it.
Yeah, I do like some exercises, and every time I do exercise, it's always to a timer because I just don't want to be there. I don't want to do it. So as soon as that timer ends, I'm like, yes, I
You mean
did
like
it.
physical exercise, like working out or something?
Yeah. Definitely physical exercise. It's like pulling teeth for me. It's like, all right, I got to be here. I got to do this. Punch the timer. Let's go.
Does it help you more to do a timer or to count like reps or something like that?
Nah, I don't like the reps thing. I would cheat. I think the reps would. Yeah. So
there'd be no reps. You just like cut it when you want.
Well, you can go as the thing about, I think, physical exercise, that activity, it's more important that you're like going through the motion for lack of a better way to say it, especially like what I do, some resistance type training. You need to go all the way through the motion, but it's not necessarily important like how many reps I get through, so long as I'm actually continuing to work for a certain amount of time. I believe that's where the impact or that growth is actually going to happen. So, I could do the reps, but I could just cheat through the reps and do like really poor, reps of something, whether it be squats or anything. I just like, this is 1, 2, I'm done. Okay. So if I just don't worry about that, I can do like only 3 reps, in the time allotment that I want, so long as I'm like doing them well, and then I say, ding, okay, finish.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's pretty good. To me, that's impressive discipline because I think the reps help me like keep track. So it's like I kind of utilize it to, count and get to where I'm trying to get. And I feel like without the reps, I just give up.
What I'm revisiting these days is the quality over quantity type of idea. It's that perfectionism which we never can really reach in our minds, or a lot of us. We want something that we can't actually achieve at the moment, and so just getting through that one repetition of that project, like starting this podcast is one of those examples where I needed to record one podcast episode so that I know what the process is like. And then I need to go through the process of editing that thing. And then I need to go through the process of promoting it and putting it out there. And there are all these steps in this complicated project that, you have been involved in with your art, and that I'm currently working on with this podcast. And we can't know those steps, but just trying to do the best we can, one step at a time is all I can muster these days. And so I'm just trying to stick with that.
Absolutely. It's powerful. When you make progress, just one foot in front of the other, it still can get you there.
I guess last maybe one or two things here is, I understand that you're a fan of utilizing grounding techniques and awareness throughout your life. And I'm just curious what this looks like for you and what benefits you think these practices give you.
Yeah, I think grounding techniques, it's been shown in research, and it's really beneficial for anxiety, especially myself. I did struggle with anxiety growing up, just as a kid even. And it really just brings you back to the present moment. And when I'm hustling and going and my mind is kind of racing, it's a challenge to really tap into the present moment. And so I've kind of picked a few favorites. One is like the noticing technique. I'm sure you've heard of that, where you take note of what's around you, your surroundings, and you find something to focus on, and you maybe describe it to yourself out loud, especially if you're having just kind of some nerves or something. And it just really kind of brings you to the present moment. And I utilize that with my clients as well, even just in the office. If they come in and they're really stressed about something that might have just happened, sometimes before we do the actual therapy session, I like to really ground them and desensitize. Because once you communicate to your body that you're safe and you're okay, then you're going to be more likely to work through the issue in a healthier state. But I like to do it even just to relax.
So just so everybody's more aware of how that happens precisely, did you mind sharing how you would go through that with one of your clients, perhaps at something in a short form?
Sure. For example, that noticing technique, it's pretty simple. It's kind of just having them have their feet, if they're sitting, touching the ground, and having their hands to the side. And I just kind of use like a visual guidance. I'm describing what they might be seeing, and then they're telling me what it looks like, what color it is. So I'll ask them something like, take a deep breath. And when you're looking ahead, what is it that you see? What are you noticing? And maybe they describe somewhere they find peaceful. I had a client the other day describe that they feel at peace in this it doesn't have to be a real place, but they had this fantasy world, very Alice in Wonderland. But as they're describing it to me, they're already desensitizing from whatever chemical was rushing through their body, but when they got into my office. And so I have them describe it, and then I say, okay, what do you notice about it? What does it smell like? What color is around you? Okay, hold that color in your head. What are you feeling right now? Where do you feel it in your body? And so it kind of goes through this process. And hopefully by the end of that, after they've described, what it feels like, okay, you're touching it. What does it feel like? And you kind of go through this process. They've already tapped into so many of their senses that the stress, your body responds to all of that. It's not just, words. So it's pretty powerful to see your nervous system react to that and change gears. And once they do that, then they're able to then hold what feels safer, what feels good. How can you kind of capture that so that you can imagine this next time, even if I'm not with you? How can you guide yourself through that? So maybe similar ties to meditation as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that with us. And that was wonderfully calming just to hear you talk through that process, kind of go through it a little bit in my head. But you don't need to actually visualize something. You could use this technique with your eyes closed, for instance, or I suppose you could also use it with your eyes open and actually focusing on an object. Or do you think it's better with the eyes closed?
Yeah, no, you can absolutely use it. I have a a client who was absolutely terrified of traffic because she had been involved in this horrible accident. And we would practice where she would go out to the street, on the side, and just find something across the street, which was very hard for her because she was already anxious. But she would find something to focus on. And it was always like, at either a tree in the distance or the background or people walking and describing and really getting involved with that moment. So yeah, it can absolutely be with your eyes open too.
All right, wonderful. Well, that was great. And I think with that said, is there any kind of last things that you want to leave anybody listening today with, pieces of advice or from your own experience that can give others who aspire to have kind of more balance, with multiple passions and careers in their lives? Like, what might you tell somebody?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think something maybe positive would be, don't be afraid to protect your space, your energy. And sometimes, that might mean even from people that you thought were rooting for you.
So be cautionary, I guess, not necessarily guarded from everybody, but definitely be aware of your own needs and what you need is very crucial for your own happiness, of course, is what I heard you say there. Is that correct?
Yeah, kind of tapping into to holding some gentle space for yourself, for sure.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining me today, Gabriela. All right, I'll put the links in the discussion notes so that people can go find out more about you. If they did want to reach out, if they had somebody that they knew can use some help, perhaps they're in your area, or maybe you can give us some links for helping other people find help that they need. And then, of course, with the Mad Prophet brand that you have and your other artwork that I'm sure you have, we'll provide links so that people can go find those things and enjoy them. And again, thanks so much for sharing all of your experiences and knowledge today. It was my pleasure to have you.
Oh, Craig, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too.
Wow. What an inspiring conversation with Gabriela. I'm feeling invigorated by her dedication to her craft and her commitment to making a difference in the mental health field. It's clear that setting clear expectations, staying true to your artistic vision, and embracing creativity for mental well-being are crucial in both art and entrepreneurship. As I wrap up this episode, I took away these key points. Number 1, set clear expectations early on in any project to ensure a fair and respectful collaboration. Number 2, embrace creative outlets for mental well-being and as a therapeutic journey, finding inspiration and passion in the process. And number 3, grounding techniques and awareness practices can benefit individuals in managing stress and anxiety, providing a sense of safety and calm. Remember, taking those incremental steps, finding mental focus through creativity, and staying dedicated to your vision can truly lead to extraordinary outcomes. And also, if you need help with an audio project from live music productions to podcasts and sound design, I'll get you to the next level and give you a free consultation to get started. Just visit ideafield.pro or send an email to dream@ideafield.pro to begin. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Field Talk, and I can't wait to continue these amazing conversations with you. And as always, stay creative.